It's now time for the grand finals for our East Cup #2 in the Mythic Dungeon International. Buff War Nerf Rogue is squaring off for a rematch against Black Mamba, and let me tell you that the former team has been looking incredibly good thus far, and I'm especially excited here, Tettles, for the Demon Hunter potential in Borealis. That's what we saw from them last week.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what strategy they end up employing in Siege of Borealis. Siege of Borealis is pretty dynamic, but the core of the dungeon is just wheel the spotter around with you and kill as much trash as possible with it. So we'll see what ends up happening. Whenever you are in this bursting environment like Siege of Borealis is this week, a lot of issues can occur, especially if you end up like rolling bursting stacks. And what rolling bursting stacks ends up meaning is that like you'll end up refreshing it.
Well, Zyronic, you're the expert on this. You want to explain rolling bursting stacks for us?
I don't know the algorithm for that.
Oh my goodness. The most egregious of offenders, Ironic, never bring him in a bursting week with you. It will end very badly. But thankfully, none of these teams have Zyronic on it, so they won't have to worry about rolling too many bursting and... I'm getting bad flashbacks just thinking about it. Let's take a look into the game as we're starting up our grand finals.
But they will have to deal with the caster curse of Zyronic looming over these two teams as we get started here. Nerf Rogue, no Vengeance Demon Hunter, which I suppose is what you're kind of throwing your hands up confusedly at the screen there. But we do see one Alliance side on before Nerf Rogue, and of course Horde for Black Mamba right now. We see those Arcane Torrents present. So they'll have a bit of an advantage with the commanders later on. They'll be able to get rid of that bolster buff that he puts on his allies that gives 70% damage reduction to his buff warrior. Nerf Rogue will have the advantage of any Shadow Meld that they want to use later on, although there's not really too much Shadow Meld play in this dungeon oftentimes, Zyro.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what the point of playing Alliance is if they aren't going to do any of this trash at the start of the dungeon, because I mean that's the major benefit of playing Alliance in this dungeon. You get all the extra trash at the start that you no longer, they're not pulling at all. They're just pulling the exact same trash that Black Mamba is pulling. So I want to see what the benefit of Shadow Meld is here. They have to have some very specific use for Shadow Meld in this dungeon. Now, of course, right away, already 8 stack of bursting on the entire group. You see the rogues using their cloak to not have to deal with that. And of course, both personal cooldowns coming out from the monk. Actually, just almost every cooldown, defensive cooldown used across the board for buff there. It's really interesting. I'm still questioning the Shadow Meld. I don't know why they're playing Alliance at all.
I'll let you scratch your noodle on that one a bit, Zyro. But yeah, a bit of aggressive pull here, and I like what they did early on. They used the sap on the Emissary of Ties. We know a lot of these emissaries aren't actually linked to the trash pack, so by using a true CC on it, they were able to separate the trash from the emissary that was nested within the group, get the casters and all the CCers down, or units that you'd require CC on, get those down, and then pull the emissary safely on top of that. But a lot of damage coming in here for Ching BB. I mean, those emissaries hit very hard, so 2 of them on top of some remaining mobs was almost enough to wipe them out. We are in a fortified environment here, so a bit of attention needed to be paid here from Loda as Black Mamba has committed their bloodlust to a similar pull here, but they've combined some of the trash along with Banesbridge as well. So they're sitting at 9% trash, and they're already at 83% on the boss. Chopper Red Hook, of course, the Alliance version of the boss, now just being pulled.
I mean, yeah, it's the exact same boss. Of course, the only difference being the name of the abilities. You have Iron Gaze for the Alliance, and you have On the Hook for, Iron Gaze for the Horde and On the Hook for the Alliance. All of the abilities are the exact same thing. The basic gist of the fight is the exact same. Kite the boss into a bomb. Boss will get stunned for 6 seconds and take extra damage. Do it all over again. That's literally the entire fight, and it's the same for both Alliance and Horde. Just literally different boss name, different ability names. Everything's the same.
I think one of the differences on the Alliance side I've heard is that they keep summoning adds, whereas you only get 1 wave on the Horde side. So, to be fair, small difference. Does it really matter in a fortified dungeon for the teams of this caliber, at this level of gear, etc.? Not really. But, you know, be remiss not to mention it, Zara. You gotta fill those poor viewers in of all the information to want them to, you know, be missing that out.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it matters on Tyrannical. On Fortified, they're not going to worry about the ads. They'll probably just have the tank off-tank everything, so not too big of an issue. And the thing is, they have enough CC for the powder shots as well, that even if they're constantly spawning. They have 2 blinds. They have the Paralyzed from the Monk. They've got a lot of stuff they can do to make sure none of those powder shot casts are getting off. Maybe if it was Tyrannical and they had 4 or 5 of them they'd have to deal with, that'd be a problem. But, you know, on this Fortified setting, you can see they have a blind and a Paralyzed out right now. They're not taking any extra residual damage right now. It's not that big of a deal for them. The boss is going to go down here pretty soon.
Not at all. And aggressive pull here for Black Mamba that kills the boss first and jumps into action against one of the commanders. They, as I mentioned earlier, do have access. There's the bolstering shot right now. They do have access to Blood Elf Arcane Torrents, which I suspect to see being used. None of them were. Oh no, there we go. Finally, Moon uses his, which gets rid of that buff on as that decreases damage taken by 70%. So bit of an advantage there. Buff Warrior knowing this and knowing they don't have the advantage to actually play around the commander. You can of course go to the right side of the house there near the water. Now, you don't want to get too close to the water. There are sharks in there and they will kill you immediately if you stay there too long. But I assume you can see a nice view there for Black Mamba, one of the sharks ominously swimming in the water as Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue does finish off that pack. And it looks like they will actually engage the commander. Not sure why they didn't just combine them. You saw that nice aggressive pull from Black Mamba, Zaire. It worked well for them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they were just off the timing for the patrol, which is a little bit unfortunate. Them, splitting one pull into two pulls is not what you want to do efficiently at all. But I think we've seen something similar from them where they'll actually end up pulling that commander into the next pack. We've seen some teams do that, so they're not opting to do that at all. But it's something. Oh no, they are opting to do that. They're going to go ahead and pull the commander into the next pack here as well, and probably focus down the Emissary of the Tide so they don't have to deal with too many of the Wave Shaper casts. Actually, they're just going to knock it away so they can deal with the Wave Shaper cast. Pretty smart play from them.
Yeah, no, I mean you have to. Well, you don't have to do that, but the Wave Shaper not only gets some bolts out on the raid, which are not really the biggest deal in the world, but it casts a shield on one of the nearby allies, and if that shield absorbs damage and then gets broken through the damage absorbers, actually explodes for a substantial amount of damage and stuns everyone around it. So last thing you want to do is have one of those go off in the party. Black Mamba's already moved ahead and is dealing with their spotter. Of course, as we mentioned earlier, spotter play very common for these teams and really just a main theme of the dungeon, how well you can play around these spotters. A lot of damage coming in right now on like 7 that is getting cleaved. He just cleaved himself to death with Blade Flurry on top of the Enchanted Emissary that was not being punted out far enough, so he basically killed himself on reflected damage there, procs his cheat death, and went down. 26% trash for them, but a death on the board. They opt not to use the battle res. They're going to let spotter do most of the work here, and then they will use a manual res later, holding on to the battle res. I think that's a good idea on their part, Zyro.
I agree. I mean, they could also have him release and run all the way back. It's not that far. He's rogue, he can stealth. So
they can also just have him not kill himself.
That also works. I actually have a list in my head of all the rogues that have done that. There are 2. He's the second one. First one was Shelly. But yeah, I mean, that's why I kept the list in the first place. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's just a little bit of a DPS brain thing to do. It's like, oh well, I'll just DPS. I won't kill myself. I have cheat death. Oh wait, I'm actually just dead. So yeah, a little bit silly to die to that, but not not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. He just had 1 DPS dead for a pull that the spotter could deal with. So it's not too big of a deal, just a little bit of a time loss for them. But I mean, in that time, Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue has come back.
Yeah, I mean, they come back and they're just about to jump onto the final bridge leading up to Dread Captain Lockwood, the second boss of the dungeon, which Black Mamba has now engaged. They're 1 death behind and also 6% trash behind, immediately putting the spotter on top of the boss and cleaving everything down. But Wong gets clipped not only by one of the hits, but has the Curse's Strike debuff from some of the adds in there, the Marauders, which increase your damage taken by 15% per stack. So can certainly be quite dangerous for the tank, but they're not applied very often, and the mobs of course don't have a lot of health either. So Wong just taking a bit of damage here, bursting, showering the group right now as the rest of the tries to catch up. Wong getting down to 4% health, popping shield wall immediately, trying to survive as Moon pops his cheat death as well. There's a lot of damage going in, but they finally managed to stabilize and ward off any incoming deaths on the group. Cannoneer still doing his frontal unholy DK, taking some damage. Ooh, Zyro, this is looking a little shaky here from Black Mamba.
Yeah, but they've kept it together, which is something that we don't normally see them do. I mean, they've somehow kept it together through all this. No deaths. I mean, they have their battle res on the board still, and I mean, it looks a lot cleaner on the side of Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue. They haven't finished off all their trash yet, so we might see them actually have that bursting come here in a second. But they've been a lot more clean with how they use the bursting. They're opting to not kill everything with spotter right away, and I'm pretty sure they've been using, making sure that they're not doing that. They've been very, very, very clean with how they deal with these bursting stacks. So they just look a lot more calm and controlled. And something I'm actually interested in is why neither of these teams opted to go for the Method and A strategy of saving their bloodlust for this boss. Because let's be honest, the trash earlier on in the dungeon isn't so dangerous that you have to use your bloodlust. I mean, the only way you'd have to use your bloodlust is if you opt to pull everything at the same time, and you can kind of just pull 2 packs. I feel like phasing the boss 1 phase sooner is a lot more of a time save than just kind of having to do 2 packs at the same time early on. It's an interesting choice to make, actually, I guess.
It is. I don't think it's that cut and dry that it's superior in either way, and I think it kind of comes down to your comp as well and the comfort of your players and CD alignment, etc. So nonetheless, it seems to be working out well for them right now as Black Mamba, both teams here on Dread Captain Lockwood, 45% for Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, 47% for Black Mamba. So Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue is actually pulled ahead on the boss percentage versus Black Mamba, which is impressive because Black Mamba got here a fair bit earlier, I would say, Zyro, and they're still behind on trash with that same 6% from earlier. So Black Mamba is really going to have to kind of just get this run moving quickly after this based on the spotter play. So it's going to be a close one, and already 5-second difference in favor of Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue from those deaths. Yeah,
I mean, they definitely haven't. They have been a lot less crisp, I would say. Crisp is the word I'm going to use for it. Black Mamba, they had, you know, a lot of danger, like we mentioned. It was very close to having multiple deaths. Both rogues parked their cheat death earlier on this boss to those bursting stacks, whereas Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue has just been super clean. I liked that observer shot from inside the cannon. That was sick.
That was cool, but what is not cool is that Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue managed to kill Dread Captain Lockwood before the next transition phase. Black Mamba did not. She jumps away at 5%. That is a huge time gain for Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue right now. They've just pulled way ahead in this dungeon because of that. Now Black Mamba has to sit here. They have to go through another cannoneer phase. They have to get the cannon. They have to use a special action button to shoot at the ship and dismount essentially Dread Captain Lockwood from the boat and then finish the last 4%. While Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, I mean, this is like a 30 to 45 second gain right here, Zyro.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, just the single target prowess of the Windwalker is very good here. And I mean, it's something interesting to say because we've talked about how much more damage Unholy DK is doing, but I think it was just more focused damage. It was probably the crisp play from Buff Warrior that allowed them. They didn't have to actually like go into crisis mode at all. As they talk about crisis mode, Ching dropping incredibly low, sub 10% there. I mean, he might go down here. This is really dangerous here. Supreme also proccing cheat death. Both rogues proccing cheat death here.
Both rogue shopping. Yeah, Tomboy's down to 5% right now. Ching's already used his shield wall there just to try and stay alive. It looks like they're stabilizing right now, but just so much damage coming in. Emissary still on the edge there as he gets resapped by one of the rogues, refusing to bring it into the group. Loda taking a hit as well, 13% for him. Supreme's going down. He releases immediately as they've checkpointed at the second boss, and Ching is just not out of the woods yet as he slowly backs up with all of the hits coming in from the spotter, but manages to stay in there with his Berserker Rage for the AoE Fear for the Demolisher, just to make sure that all of the damage is kept central on top of the mobs. Now, of course, we know that the spotter's damage does not apply to the Demolisher, so they're going to have to sit here and just chunk the rest of it down as Black Mamba has also finished the boss and is doing a similar pull here right now.
I mean, as scary as that was, you kind of have to hand it to Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue. That looked like it was almost going to be a full team wipe. Ching almost dropped very low, but they were able to, you know, spot heal him out of it. The only death they had was on one of the rogues, and it's not that big of a deal because you can run back. Most of the work is done by the spotters here. So that was just insane execution there from a pull that looked like it was almost over with Ching dropping sub 10%. I mean, the quality of this team, and I mentioned it before, I think they're definitely several tiers ahead of even Black Mamba, who's had moments of brilliance as well previously in tournaments, but like they're just so much better at dealing with bad situations. Any team can take a route, run through a dungeon if everything goes perfectly. Where good teams really set themselves apart is whenever they have something go wrong and they're able to fix the run and get out of it. I mean, when you saw it right there, that was almost disastrous for them.
It was, and we see those kind of great heads-up plays all the time from the better teams. You know, let's say the Rested Druid judging a bad situation and runs off and shadow melts to reset the pull rather than the full team wipe running back from their previous checkpoint. So things like that happen all the times, and the best teams make use of the best heads-up plays. Black Mamba here, 45% right now with their Bloodlust coming up in 15 seconds on the trash, and that is, and Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue 56% on trash. They have their Bloodlust available, but I largely expect that they will be using it later. Pretty substantial pull coming in here for Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, playing around with that spotter, and we'll have to see if this play is spot on for them as well, as Light gets chunked over on the side of Black Mamba, and they dance around the spotter, nuking down as well. They have a Demolisher in the pack, as I mentioned earlier, that does not get affected by the spotter fire, so all the players will be priority cleaving off of that Demolisher to make sure that they can efficiently and quickly get that down in order to move on and try to catch up to this Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue team that, you know, keeps looking shaky, like what you said, Zara, just because people keep chunking and yo-yoing up and down in health, even outside of the bursting stacks, but they're holding it together every time.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely holding it together. This is really impressive coming from them. And, you know, they're opting to go for a much safer pull strategy. They're not going for that large Western-style pull that we saw last weekend, where they opt to save the first spotter, pull everything through this choke point here, and then try to double spotter everything down. They're just going for the safe pull, even going for the super safe pull, double sap, double blind on all of the snipers, and just letting the spotter deal with the trash for them. I mean, I would have to imagine some of this is because they know they're ahead in the dungeon and all they have to do is play it safe. But I mean, this is almost ultra safe from them. This is a little bit too safe, honestly. I want to see them go for something bigger than this, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go to that safety level to ultra safe. That is just a dangerous level to be at, according to my man Zyro here, as Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue steps into the Hadal hallway, shall we call it? Whatever it may be, this is where you pull the boss to. Once you pull the boss in his patrol pathing in his room, he pulls the entirety of the trash. We've seen this a million times. And then you're kind of stuck in this little hallway dancing around with the spotter, and the tank tries to dance around to survive and move out of the way, not only for the officer charges, but of course that constant applying deadly poison 5-stack that is just so much damage. This is really, at least in my opinion, Zyre, where a lot of the runs in Siege of Borealis are made or broken.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's going to come down to their spotter placement here. And it looks like they're going for, like, they're opting for safe play. They're not pulling the entire room. And I think this harkens back to what Jack was saying right before the match, where, you know, who really cares if you just win a cup? These guys are already qualified for Blizzcon, right? They don't really need to prove that they want to beat Black Mamba unless they really want the extra prize money. I feel like in tournament play, you only get so much tournament practice. You kind of want to be able to practice your big style, your MDT, your insane MDI pulls, because you're not going to be able to practice in a tournament scenario. You're only going to be able to get a tournament realm practice. It's not the same thing. Playing in a tournament is completely different.
No, I mean, you're certainly right about that. Loadhead practice undulating tide should be up in about 30 seconds there. There's a bit of lag, of course, that is on the side of the observers. So the rogues end up going down here on the side of Buffware and Nerf Rogue. That little hiccup you saw is on our side, not the player side. So that is legit devs going down and not the sloppiness you want to see coming out of Buffware and Nerf Rogue, right with Black Mamba kind of hot on their tail right now.
Especially when they're pulling safe. I mean, you don't want to see those deaths at all, but they're not doing the entire Haddle pull. It's not what you want to see. And on top of that, because of the way they've been pulling, because of how unclean they've been, they no longer have any battle reses available. And, you know, these bosses are fortified, but it's still dangerous. You don't want to have no backup scenario.
No, I mean, exactly. They used both of their reses on the rogues right there to stabilize a situation that, frankly, was already stable after they had died, but they wanted to get that commander down quickly because the commander, just like the demolishers that we saw earlier, is not affected by the spotter fire. So big pain in the ass, pain in the butt, excuse me, for those mobs going down. But the problem is with the commanders is not only do they have they're not affected by the demolisher, however, they also put the bolstering up on everybody and they charge around just like we saw. So the problem is that it's so hard to get effective hitting on them. They run away from you. You're trying to keep the rest of the mobs in the spotter. One of the melees or one of the DPS is tied to raining down damage on top of the spotter. So it's really dangerous. They take so long. You can already see it right now. The commander's at 35% health, and they're just stuck here DPSing it. Whereas the more efficient teams, Zyre, that we've seen in the West combine this with the boss.
Did they opt to go for like a super safe strategy where they literally do just one trash pack at a time? I'm trying to see if there's any trash left in Haddle's room. I'm going to call this Haddle Street that they're on right now, and where Haddle is patrolling around is Haddle Square.
Well, wouldn't this be Haddle Street, and that's kind of Haddle Alley? Or
Haddle Alley.
Haddalley?
Haddalley. That'll work.
Okay.
Haddalley. That's what
Let's
we'll call
go
it from
with
now on. Yeah, no, it looks like, they just, this is really weird. They're going to have to backtrack for extra trash percentage. And backtracking, I mean, with how far ahead they are, it'll work, but it's the same concept, I feel like. You know, do you really only want to play a strat that's tailoring to just beating one team who, I mean, okay, Black Mamba, when they're good, but I feel like for a team that's qualified for BlizzCon, you already have to be looking forward and thinking, okay, we're going to be playing against Method EU, Method NA, Abracadabra, and, you know, whatever the fourth team from the West region is going to be. This strategy will not beat the West teams.
What was that travel form on the Resto Druid on the side of Black Mamba?
I didn't see.
There's like a sheep or something. Certainly wasn't the usual stag with the antlers that we see. That was different. But Buffware and Nerf Rogue here now getting up to 100% trash as they get ready to go into Haddal's Square and pull the boss here, getting ready. Now they've cleared the entirety of the room. Certainly a much safer strategy than what we've seen in the past. At least what we saw versus the West. As I mentioned, West pulls Emissary of Tides and Commanders on top of the boss, cleaves everything down together. I did mention the Commanders are a pain in the butt. So it's so much damage and so much attention needs to go into them that it's not efficient to just cleave them and then DPS them down after you've killed them, the rest of the trash with the spotter. So nonetheless, Buffware and Nerf Rogue goes for the much safer strategy, but I mean, why not? They're head of the dungeon right now. Black Mamba is still 75% trash. They're playing it extremely slow. The spotter's still available for them. They're only starting the Haddal pull in the Haddal Street and Haddalley right now.
Yeah, all that. The only reason you wouldn't go for a safer strat is like if you don't really care about getting the extra practice in for tournament. That's all I'm thinking about right now, and that's really kind of a logistical thing. That's not really like a results-oriented thing for right now. So it makes sense that they just kind of want to guarantee that they win this cup just for the extra prize money, for the extra points. There is still seeding involved, of course. They want to get as many points as possible because Team D still could come back 2 weeks from now and win a tournament from them and have more points than them. So that's definitely something that could be in the back of their minds too. But yeah, what you're saying makes sense. They could just be going for the safe win just to get the tournament win.
I mean, but you also look at a team like Method EU, and there's a certain component, as much as we don't talk, or sometimes do talk about it, of pride for the team. They want to be just that first seed. They want to show that they're the best always, no matter what. So, you know, it's not impossible that there's an East team that has this kind of feeling as well. Team D, in my opinion, would be a team in that kind of situation. However, they're not with us this week right now. Hadal, 15% here for Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue as Supreme goes quite low. No proc on the cheat death. Unlike on the side of Black Mamba, that proc cheat death during all the trash coming in from Madal, and gets quite low as well right now as he's kiting some of the spotter artillery strike down onto the rest of the group. Do manage to back up into the Hadali here. We see the shield wall popped up from Wong as they managed to get themselves out of that kind of cubby that they were tucked in, but still double. Is there 2 officers right now, or 2 commanders rather? I see only 1. They're going to need to deal with that on top of the spotter.
Yeah, just the 1 commander for them, but I mean, I feel like this is too late. Buff War Nerf Rogue, they've already dealt with Haddle. They're already getting out of Haddle Street right now. What's this rock? We're going to have to come up with a name for that later. They're moving down to the final boss here, and I mean, they've even got their Bloodlust available for one of the platforms should they choose to try to skip one of the Demolishing Terrors by using Bloodlust on one of the Gripping Terrors. It's all coming together for them. This is going to be their map to win, and I feel like they have to wipe this boss twice for Black Mamba to have a chance to come back with all of the mistakes that Black Mamba has made. But that being said, I mean, from all the matches we've seen from Black Mamba in this tournament, they only have 4 deaths. They haven't really been that... The run hasn't been that bad, but the mistakes that they've made have just been pretty bad ones.
Yeah, pretty bad ones, and certainly one of the cleaner dungeons we've seen from Black Mamba, but also they're just playing slow, they're playing safe, there's still some hiccups even with that slow, safe play, and, you know, that's great. We talk about this theme of, yes, that kind of play is great when you're dealing with some of the mid-tier teams, in some of the progression phases of the bracket, but when you're getting to the grand final of the bracket, when you're getting to trying to get to BlizzCon, when you're getting to playing against some of the best in the West, you can't have that. I mean, they'll just chew you up and spit you out with this kind of play. So it's not working for them. And even in this series, it's not working for them right now. As Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue has already started here on Vikoth, the final boss, and they've already shot one of the cannons, if I'm not mistaken. So they're on the 2nd platform already. Black Mamba hasn't even started the 3rd boss yet.
And it's important to note, not only are Black Mamba playing for their BlizzCon spot, but this is important for Team D as well. If Black Mamba loses this series, Team D is also qualified for BlizzCon. If Buff War Nerf Rogue wins this series, our BlizzCon spots are locked for East Region. We have Buff War Nerf Rogue and Team D. So all eyes are pretty much on Black Mamba. Are they good enough to get it done? And so far in this particular dungeon, they have not been good enough to take down Buff War Nerf Rogue.
No, they haven't. And I'm not really sure if anybody will be able to, because, you know, the story from Season 1 was basically that Battle for Champion, who's no longer competing, was equivalent to Team D, and Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue was kind of that abracadabra version of the East last season where, you know, they were pretty good, but they weren't able to really get any of those top 2 spots. This season, they've stepped it up. They've become one of the top 2 powerhouses with Team D. Team D, of course, not here this weekend. So I honestly just kind of feel generally like in terms of top tier or tier 1 East teams right now, nobody is really able to compete with Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue.
Right, like you mentioned, it's literally only Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue and Team D together at the top. And it almost seemed like that for a little while in the Spring Cup as well, where, like you mentioned, we only had Battle for Champion and Team D, but Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, slowly as the season progressed, they got better and better. And I think it was actually like that for Black Mamba as well. They slowly got better and better as well. But unfortunately, like you mentioned, we don't have them available with us. But I mean, Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, they're done with the dungeon. They have been incredibly clean in this dungeon. 2 of their deaths were just on that same pull right before Haddle. But, you know, this was definitely way too clean of a run. I want to see more MDI, like, BlizzCon ready strats from them. They're up 1-0 in the series, but, like, I feel like I'm wanting more from them.
I don't blame you on that one. With Buff War Nerf Rogue sealing that first game, they definitely made it look a little bit too easy, too safe for the strategies on that one. You know, I mean, we've seen a number of MDI players, especially from the West, talk about their strategies and their setups and say, it's good if you don't feel safe. It's good if you're not comfortable with the pull, because that means you're pulling as hard as possible.
How real is that, though? Because with this bump up from 17 to 18, it feels like consistency across the board, across regions, across everything, feels like it's lacking. Just from, like, we saw Abracadabra have consistency issues. We even saw Method EU having consistency issues. So having something where Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue only ends up having like 2 or 3 deaths and has a consistent run, I feel like it might end up being better than, like, the theoretical maximum for something like that. Because while it feels like perfect runs are just so few and far between this season, but Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue ends up dealing with, like, the spotter and how they end up doing the dungeon. It is a little bit slower than, like, the theoretical maximum for the dungeon, but they do it in such a great way. And they, like how they did Hadal's room with like just 2 packs of trash as opposed to trying to do all of it together, or overextending with a dungeon that they theoretically should already win, is pretty good from them.
Well, the reasoning that Jack is going with is specifically something that Method and A was saying, is that if you ever get to the point where you're comfortable with a pull, you kind of get to the point where, well, if we're comfortable with it, let's just add more to it. Because if we have the opportunity to add more to it, you can bet that Method EU will do it, and they'll probably pull it off 90% of the time. So it makes sense to have that mindset. I'm not sure if that really applies to the Eastern region so far, because like we mentioned, there's really only those 2 top teams.
Yeah, and if you're not getting pushed, like you say, like if there's no like other like really difficult contender that Buff War Nerf Rogue really has to like show their whole entire hand against, maybe there will be some issues with it.
That's a fair point. And speaking of some of those larger pulls, let's start talking about Hadal's room a little bit over Borealis.
Yeah, so with Hadal's room, whenever you actually pull the boss, all of the trash inside of that room will end up pulling with him. So you see Buff War Nerf Rogue utilizing that there with the spotter that they get from that archer pack to be able to take down as much trash as possible. And this is done pretty well, especially in like a bursting environment where the trash needs to be dying evenly. It can actually be kind of dangerous if Loda gets this spotter on him while he needs to DP or needs to heal up through all of those bursting stacks. But Loda does a very good job, and they do a great job of keeping these mobs grouped up in like a tight corner. They LOS them around line of sight and just get all the mobs grouped up, get them inside the spotter, and then get them killed pretty quickly. So it was a pretty good pull by Buff War Nerf Rogue there.
It was, and it was definitely a surprise not to see the Vengeance Demon Hunter and see how they were preparing themselves, but maybe that starts going on to what we're talking about, is they're running with something that's going to be higher damage overall. They're consistently DPSing them through to make sure it's easier for those mobs to die and not chain bursting stacks together. So let's see, as we start going on to game number 2, which will be on the Motherlode. We'll be bringing it up on the other side of this break. Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon International's grand final for the Eastern Cup weekend number 2. Buff War Nerf Rogue is having their rematch against Black Mamba, who needs to win this one to stay alive in the series in the Motherlode.
The Motherlode, Zyra, I mean, we've talked about, the most trash-rich dungeon, etc., etc., and, oftentimes we see this dungeon combined with very, quite frankly, dangerous affixes that really bolster the trash and make it quite nasty and a nightmare to deal with. Here, I would say this is one of the most tame Motherlodes we can possibly see, so I would expect if a team like Buff War Nerf Rogue's caliber to really just kind of run away with this one.
Yeah, and so there was something Tettles was mentioning before we started the cast here, and I completely agree with him. We keep talking about, okay, well, I kind of agree with him.
Okay, that's better.
Okay, a little better. Okay, there's something we wanted to see from Buff War Nerf Rogue, where in order to compete with the Western teams, like we've been talking about through this entire series, you kind of have to commit to the double Unholy DK in this dungeon. It's just so good for dealing with those dangerous pulls. I mean, the amount of damage Unholy DK can pop out. I mean, for instance, we talk about that pull of Doom right after this first boss. With double Unholy DK, you don't even need to commit Bloodlust. That pull just melts. It just enables so much in this dungeon, and I think that them not running it is just like, maybe they're not practiced, maybe they don't have a second DPS that plays the Unholy DK, but I feel like it's just the better comp to run for this dungeon.
But Supreme is fairly familiar with the DK, right? And I gotta say, that pull was pretty lackluster for his damage. And that was a pretty beefy pull, so not really sure what went wrong there for him, but he certainly shouldn't be anywhere close to being beaten by an Outlaw Rogue for a pull that size, committing with Bloodlust and all cooldowns. Disaster, though, on the side of Black Mamba as one of the rogues goes down. Envies follow suit, and looks like it'll be a full team wipe unless Envies can get back in time to start paying attention to Wong. Wong can kite these Peacekeepers all day long. The real problem comes from the mech jockeys that are going to cast that grease gun on some of the melee nearby, and of course the adult thugs casting their charge every once in a while, especially if they have Inhale Vapors, that 50% increased physical damage on top of it. It's going to get someone killed as Wong dips sub 10%, 11% right after that. Moon procs cheat death as well. Now, Envies is back. He's trying to heal everybody up, but everything is all over the place right now as they head into the little gazebo area there and try to get finished with the rest of these mobs, but it's just so sloppy. Man, this is a bit of a nightmare.
I didn't know these adult thugs were wrestlers, but one of those adult thugs was buffed with the Inhale Vapors and did his best JBL impression, clotheslined Envies from 40 yards away, one-shot him down. I mean, that was... I hope we get a clip of that. That was interesting to watch, because I saw it happen like live. I saw the rogue go down, then I saw that adult thug come in from afar and just bop him right down. Really unfortunate. But here's the thing. Sorry, DK, not Rogue. But that DK has been dead for this entire pull, and he's still topping the meters. So you can kind of see the prowess of the DK when the pull's kind of tailored for them here.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And yeah, he's been dead for a while. Moon, of course, has that cheat death, not available for another 4.5. He was one of the brunt end victims earlier. The second rogue still quite healthy for now on the side of Black Mamba. But, you know, as meaty and dangerous as everything looked and the Unholy DK pumping out damage, Zyra, they're only at 12% trash. I mean, they're just barely cleaning up this pool. They have 2 more Peacekeepers. That might take them to, I think, 20, somewhere between 18 and 20%. And then they're going to have to res and keep going, whereas Buff Warrior and Nerf Rogue still 0 deaths on the board, 29% trash already, are still working on a quite meaty pull here. There are 2 Peacekeepers, a few Thugs, etc. So already, I mean, just kind of as predicted earlier, Buff Warrior and Nerf Rogue already starting to run away with this one.
Yep, and I mean, a lot of that has to do, I think, with the DK being dead. Just being 1 DPS down for these massive AoE pulls.
Especially DK.
Especially the DK, right. Having him dead for just even those 3 Peacekeepers, there's so much damage they're missing out on. I mean, you can see the difference. Supreme doing a pretty decent amount more damage than both of the rogues, and they're missing out on a lot of damage by having the DK dead. They're going to be able to res him up, and they're going to be able to start progressing, you know, at hopefully a similar speed through the dungeon than Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue. But Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, it's just kind of the trend for them. They just look so much more polished with their trash pulls. I feel like they have their CC completely cleaned up. They know who's interrupting what, they know who's gouging what, they know who's sapping or distracting what. I mean, it looks like they're just completely figured out, whereas Black Mamba just still has some hiccups every single time they go into a dungeon.
Yeah, I mean, and that just comes down to a lot of practice with this kind of things. And, you know, Tattles talked about it earlier. We talked about it at the desk all the time. You get what you put in terms of practice in these dungeons and, you know, trusting your teammates, who's CCing what, who's interrupting what, and it shows for a team like Buff Warrior and Nerf Rogue. It's 41% trash for them right now as another double Peacekeeper pull. Rain's Onslaught on top of them. Would expect largely for them to be kind of following the new meta or the new trend, if you will, for this dungeon to get kind of that 60-70% trash and then go to coin-operated crowd pummeler, and then after that deal with the Pull of Doom, as we've seemed to have deemed it and coined it today. 18% here for Black Mamba. They're just trying their best to catch up, but having a lot of struggles as Moon dips so low. He doesn't have cheat death available. Gets a charge from one of those adult thugs. Does get healed up by Envies as he takes another grease gun right after that. Manages to stay alive. Poor Moon just getting absolutely pummeled to the face as Buff Warrior and Nerf Rogue hits 49%, and they're about to kill their Peacekeeper, and they're making the pull substantially safer for the tank.
I mean, you don't ever want to pull one mech jockey on his own. They've got 2 of them. I mean, those grease guns are scary. Fortunately, it's not raging like it was for the West last week, or we would see multiple dead people on the side of Black Mamba. So, yeah, somehow they're able to get through that with no deaths. Moon didn't even have the cheat death available, so, you know, he was scared that entire pull. So that was a little spooky. And on the topic of the Pull of Doom, we can call okay, you have a choice. We can call it the Pull of Doom, or we can call it the Eating Hot Butter Pull. Which one do you prefer?
Let's go with the Eating Hot Butter pull.
I like that. All right, we'll go with that one. Yeah, because, I mean, the reason we say that is, of course, with the double unholy K, you do eat through that pole like it is hot butter, or, you know, like a hot knife through butter. Well, I forget what you said, but we'll say the eating hot butter. That sounds better.
I mean, I'm eating butter right now while casting. It's delicious. 29% here for Black Mamba as they. I mean, every pull looks substantial. I keep wanting to say a substantial pull, but there's such a high trash density in this dungeon that it's pretty commonplace to see, you know, 2 to 3 thugs per pull, 2 to 3 Peacekeepers, a couple of mech jockeys and vendors in there as well. So every pull just looks the same. Now, this actually looks like a pretty beefy pull here for Buff Warrior and Nerf Rogue. This is beyond what I was just describing. This is a triple pack combined with everything. Loda proccing his staff and getting a quaking on top of it, dips sub 20%, but manages to hang on as Ching starts getting a huge amount of damage. Oddly enough, Ching is running Undulating Tides, not really supporting that decision as a tank. The amount of times you'll frequently drop below 50% HP as a tank is, well, it's a lot. Meaning you basically just have a dead Azerite trade, that it's not doing anything, because once Undulating Tides procs, even if you get that extra bit of safety, you can explore that through different venues and different Azerite trades. So not a fan of that choice, but nonetheless, it does proc here for him, helps him with a bit of damage mitigation, and they do manage to get this pretty nasty pull down, Zyra.
I mean, you can see the benefit of running that staff on the healers. Almost, I think it's about 1.5 million of Loda's damage is just from the staff proc alone. You can see he bursted for some like 80k DPS at the start of that pull when that staff procced. In addition to doing all that damage, also healed everyone in the group too. So it was just it's a double-edged sword, and it's really good for healers in general. I mean, that saved that pull. Unfortunately, on the side of Black Mamba, it's not going so well for them as Wong goes down, and they don't have a battle rest for him.
Everything going Wong, as we said before. He has these tendencies to just... He does it in a lot of the maps. I'm not sure if it's on him or on Envies or a miscommunication between their pulls. This is the kind of stuff that you see on live play too, when there's a disconnect with synergy between the tank and healer. Sometimes the tank just kind of runs in, the healer's not ready for it, you get slammed. Or you run in, you don't pop your block, you don't pop your shield wall, something like that. The one kind of issue with Warriors, if you will, is if you run into a pull with 0 rage, if you don't have 30 rage for your shield block, you can't get shield block up. You get smacked by everything very quickly before you get that shield block up. I'm not sure what the issue was there. I mean, it's not hard to generate that 30 rage with a charge plus shield slam combo, but nonetheless, it was just another one of these situations that we see Wong have often, where he just runs in and it just drops like a fly, and then obviously after that, everything just snowball effects. Unholy DK went down, full team wipe, and they're running right back.
And to make matters worse, they didn't even like wipe it up quickly and move on. They tried to keep it going, and they just. I mean, he must have been trying to Shadow Mode save that, but it wasn't even that. I mean, they should have just wiped quickly and gotten back quicker. They're wasting so much time doing this. If they're only on 38 trash percentage, while Buff Warner Frug, they're halfway through the boss, and they pulled trash on top of the boss. They've got double the trash percentage. They're halfway through the boss. I mean, Buff Warner Frug is just destroying this dungeon right now.
They are destroying indeed. Almost double the trash percentage there. We'll have to review the math later. You've been talking to Nagura too much, but big hit coming in on the group right now. Buff Warrior, Nerf Rogue. I'm not sure if the boss absorbed any of the coins, because that was a pretty substantial static shock hit on the group, which of course gives a big hit initially plus a damage over time effect. But Loda did manage to heal through all of that. You can see his HP is pumping right there on the screen as Buff Warrior, Nerf Rogue gets the boss down to 28%. There are still a couple of Peacekeepers involved in this pull right now, as the last one does fall, and they immediately start to move out of that coin pile. Here come the foot bombs though, but the boss is going to be dragged away from those coins. Actually, it absorbs 2 of those coins fall, so likely they did absorb earlier, which is why we saw the group chunk so hard.
Yep, and of course, you just, like you mentioned, you just observed more, so this next static shock will do a lot of damage, but the boss should be going down quickly. It has a 3-stack of that bomb debuff on it right now, so they should be fine right after the static shock, and I mean, they didn't even drop below half HP. They're going to be fine. Boss should be going down here very, very shortly for them, and we're going to see how they plan on doing these pulls after the first boss. They don't have their Bloodlust available. They only have 1 Unholy DK, so it's not like they have the insane the AoE burst that we saw from teams like Abracadabra, where they run the double Unholy DK. So interested to see how they deal with this. Black Mamba still dealing with trash, still significantly behind on trash, and they still have yet to deal with the boss. They do have their Bloodlust available just now, but wait, did they not use their Bloodlust ever?
No, they did at the beginning.
Oh, this
at the beginning.
It's supposed to be an observer thing. And so yeah, they definitely used their Bloodlust at the beginning. So yeah, I'm interested to see what they plan on doing for trash.
Actually,
if this is the last trash that
did they use it at the beginning? I think they did. Now you're making me second guess myself. Okay, I don't like what I'm seeing here for Buff Warrior and Nerf Rogue. They're going for the full Eating Worm butter pull right now on top of the Void Emissary. We have seen 3 separate occasions of teams trying to do this and fail miserably. So we'll see if they'll be the first. Shield Wall fading here in a moment for Ching BB. 1 out of that available. Last Stand is down. Avatar is down. He's already had Iron Bar coming from Loda, so the tank is very vulnerable, but they do just enough damage to kill everything off cleanly. So look at that. To be fair, that pull, if the mobs had an extra 20-30% health left over and they didn't pull off that kind of damage, then Ching was dead pretty much at that point. But they knew it. Well practiced. They knew the kind of damage they had. They came into it and they rocked it.
Are Loda and Ching running the Cursed Lovers Ring? Is that what that beam is between them? I don't think I've ever seen that in the MDI before. That's interesting.
Check.
That's something, if they are using it, it redistributes their health between the 2 players. I don't think I've ever seen that particular beam before. Interesting. But yeah, we have more deaths on the side of Black Mamba, unfortunately. 3 more deaths on the board. They're at 12 deaths now on their side. Looks like that trash pull just didn't go so great for them. So unfortunately, more deaths, more disaster for them. But Buff Warner Frog, like you mentioned, that pull is dangerous. There's so many things that can go wrong there. I think part of the problem, we saw them try to do that same pull in the first Eastern Cup, and it went poorly for them for pretty much one reason, and that it was necrotic last time. The tank couldn't stay in and deal with everything. Instantly went down. But it's the same thing. If one of the DPS goes down, namely the Unholy DK, because he can rip aggro with his AoE damage very easily, that pull is done. It's completely over.
You could pull through it easily. I know they're not wearing the ring. Sorry to disappoint Shazar, but they're not wearing the Cursed Lover's Ring from the Ashara Eternal Palace raid. So I'm not sure really what that beam was. Perhaps one of the essences or Azerite traits from the Druid. Buff Warrior and Nerf Rogue at 96% right now as they pop one of their shrouds and run right up to the boss. Actually, no, they don't run right up to the boss. They stop and they kill a couple of Stone Furies on the way, which is the remaining 4% trash that they need. Bit of a, weird. I mean, not bad pathing, it's just new. We haven't seen this before. I think they pulled just enough for the 4%, and then after that they will be using, did they even use a Shroud there? They did. No, they didn't use a Shroud. I thought they did. It's just, I expect Shroud usually, and they go up the hill. They actually just came in, face pulled half of the Stone Fury Gauntlet trash, killed it off, and after that I assume they will use Tomboys. As you can see, he has his Shroud available, and then move right up to Azrak because they'll be done with trash. They'll be at 100%. Black Mamba, 70% still on the very first boss with 52% trash and 12 deaths difference. That's an extra minute on the board. Zyro, Is it too early to say that there's no way they can lose this one?
There's absolutely no way Buff 4 Nerf Rogue is going to lose this dungeon at this point. They just have... I mean, this is reminding me a lot of the strategy we saw from Motherload at the start of the dungeon, where they get rid of all 100% of the trash before getting to Azeroth, and then they just go triple boss. But the difference is it's fortified this time instead of tyrannical, so they don't have to worry about really much in this dungeon at all. So Azeroth, the only dangerous part of this dungeon, I feel like, is going to be these 4 Earth Ragers on Azeroth. After this, these fortified bosses are going to melt like hot butter.
Like hot butter. Chew through that hot butter. Yum, yum. Not, we have halfway through the Bloodlust here. Now, in terms of pathing, though, to be fair, I'm not... You know, the separation of the Stone Furies, which are not the most dangerous mobs, plus then using Bloodlust on a, as you mentioned, fortified, non-tyrannical boss, maybe not the most efficient. I'm sure you can combine that kind of prowess with Taskmaster Ascari and the surrounding mobs there, consisting of Earth Sapers and Sappers, which I believe we saw some West teams do, even though it wasn't necrotic or rage. No, it was raging, so it was quite dangerous for them as a result. But I mean, you know, they got to know how ahead they are at this point, so maybe it was just a comfort play by them that said, hey, let's not risk it. We usually do this pull, and success rate's not been 100%, so let's play it nice and slow as Azeroth dips below 50% HP, while Black Mamba is... how are they still on this boss? It feels like it's taken forever on the side of Black Mamba.
I mean, 12 deaths on the board. This has not been a clean dungeon, and I think we even just saw Moon missing the bomb on the boss. Unfortunately, they had to get a second kick. Fortunately, it didn't explode on the entire group, because that would have probably killed them with how low they are to the next static shock, but you just the drain coming out from Envies here, which is not something you really want to see on this boss, where damage is kind of the focus, especially when the boss has that 3 stack from the bombs. They probably could have killed the boss before that before that knockback, but yeah, just too many unfortunate plays from Black Mamba, where it's just been a trend, I feel like, this entire weekend. Black Mamba has just not been playing their best. They just haven't been playing up to their potential, I feel like.
No, and keep in mind, this is a team that entirely revamped their DPS portion of their roster, so you know, team synergy at this caliber of play is not something you get overnight, not by any means. I mean, sometimes, you know, some teams naturally have it with guys that have been playing together for a long time, and they put a team together. Doesn't seem like that's the case here for Black Mamba's Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue kills Azeroth not long after Black Mamba, who is now doing the pull of eating hot butter on the other side, and just a lot of damage coming in for them. I don't think they pulled the Void Emissary, but huge damage coming in, barely hanging on for the Unholy DKs. Wong dips really low as well. One of the Rock Lances goes out, barely survives, tries to head off, and line of sight one of the other casts, but it's not enough as the next one finishes him off. Envies has already procced his staff on the boss earlier. Rogues are going down left and right. Unholy DK falls too, and Envies will follow suit for a full team wipe without the Void Emissary, something that Buff Warriors showed they could do earlier. And the first death finally coming in here for Loda on the side of Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, and they're going to have to commit, I believe, their battle res to it. One of their battle reses in order to get him up, because he's the only one who can just regular res, so...
Yeah, they're going to have to pull the boss, let Supreme get some energy, and then go ahead and battle res, and that's what they're doing here. So it looks a little weird, but he has to, of course, get some of that runic power so he can commit the battle res. That's one of the problems with Unholy DK. So, you know, weird pull from them, but it works out. I was going to say, this is a very blazing fast run from them, but I kind of want to compare it to Abracadabra, because Motherload was one of our time trials this weekend for the next Western Cup, which will be next weekend. Abracadabra had like a 16-minute Motherload. It was blazing fast, and I think that's mostly in part due to the Unholy DK and pulling around the double Unholy DK. So I kind of want to see, hopefully, Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, you know, if they're very serious about competing for Blizzcon, I want to see them pull out the double Unholy DK for some of these dungeons. I feel like it's super strong.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It seems to be, and not just this dungeon, we've actually seen it in Freehold's another good example where we've seen some teams make use of it. Ching proccing his Undulating Tides again. I don't know why he's using that trade, but nonetheless, it is available on the boss one more time. Bricks of Flux Flame down to 50% for them, as Black Mamba is still at 62% trash. Trying to chew through the rest of that pool of doom on the side, and I believe they split it up at this point. We can see the Void Emissary in the corner, so they still have 38% trash to make up. They somehow have to overcome the dungeon by 85 seconds, and they're also an entire boss and a half, almost 2 bosses behind. Zyro, take it away.
I mean, there's not a whole lot going on here. Buff Warrior Nerf Rogue, they have to deal with probably 2 of the easiest bosses on Fortified left in any of these dungeons, and I don't really see them messing it up at this point. Like we're saying, there's absolutely no way they're going to mess up any of these bosses. There's nothing that can possibly go wrong. So take it away.
Unless the boss resets, certainly don't see that happening. Breaks it here, single digits for Buff Warrior Nerf Rogues. They're about to finish it off, and then, of course, do the usual stealth up the hill and skip. We do know Ching is playing that Night Elf unsurprisingly. Sometimes you see a couple of the warrior tanks playing dwarf in some of the dungeons just to be able to stone form some of the bleeds, or necrotic, none of which are present here. So no question about that Night Elf pick as they head up the hill right now in order to close out this dungeon in, honestly, a quite good motherload. Pretty impressive time, solid time for them, as Black Mamba is still just struggling through the rest of this 68% trash, and they have so much trash to make up, which leads me to believe that Black Mamba is dealing with the drills probably on the side at this point.
I would guess they have to do some pretty substantial pull to finish off the rest of the trash. But I mean, looking at Buff War Nerf Rogue, I feel like for the routing they chose, this was just about as perfect of a run. You know, minus, of course, the unfortunate load of death on the trash skip to Rix to Flux Flame. But yeah, there's not a whole lot that they could have done better this dungeon outside of maybe just pumping a little more DPS somehow. Outside of RNG, this run has been almost perfect from them. And like I said, the only thing I think they could do to make their run better is probably swap in another Unholy DK and pull bigger. I mean, this run was fantastic from them.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would nitpick is the 3 Stone Furies during the kind of rock gauntlet before Azarok. That was a bit of really a dinky pull. It wasn't very dangerous to them. I'm not sure if they used it as a moment to reset their cooldowns before going to Azarok and using their Bloodlust on top of that, but probably not the most efficient. They could do a bit better with that one. Otherwise, you're right, and that's just kind of splitting hairs here, Zyra. Don't say anything.
Oh,
that's just splitting hairs at this point. I mean, otherwise it was a quite successful run. Black Mamba looks like they bit off maybe more than they could chew. They have how many in there? 3 or 4 extractors. Those are very dangerous mobs. Those are the next version, essentially, of the Peacekeepers later on. Lieutenant-style mobs that you can't crowd control. You have to kill them. The Rider comes out. You have to kill the Rider after that. They do a really nasty static frontal, to be fair. You can't avoid it, but a lot of nasty damage coming in as Mogul Razdunk is in transition phase here. Loda just moves in just a bit with his Quaking to make sure that he can get access to all the players getting healed as Ching Heroic leaps over and puts, I believe, the second last drill smash in the corner.
Keep an eye on those Sky Scourgers. You don't want to see them disengaging off the platform here. That would be the only thing keeping Buff War Nerf from finishing this boss in the next minute and a half or so. So, I mean, I want to kind of hand it to Buff War Nerf. They made one swap. They brought in Supreme as a DPS, and it looks like it's made all the difference for the team. They look so much better than they did for any of the Spring Cups. And they were a team that, like we mentioned, they were pretty securely in that 3rd place spot for all of Spring. And, I mean, of course, we don't have Battle for Champion anymore, but, I mean, even in the Cup last weekend, 2 weeks ago, they looked better than Team D, and they won that tournament because of it. And for a team that was 3rd place for all of Spring, making that one swap and winning the first 2 cups of the summer season, this is a huge improvement for them.
Huge improvement. I would also support my guildmate if he were present on a team right now. I'm just kidding, Zyra. No, it's made a huge difference. And, you know, I was talking about it before this cast. Last season, they were kind of the abracadabra, so to speak, of the East. You know, they were never really in the top 2. They weren't able to hang with the best in the top 2. And I think that kind of change and the general play and synergy of the team has finally allowed them to bump up to that top tier East level, matching Team D and matching, well, Battle for Champion, who's no longer competing, but matching Battle for Champion as well. So I think they're there now, Zyra.
Yep, and as Mogul Razdunk dropping below 10%, this is going to be it for Buff War Nerf Rogue, and unfortunately, that's going to be the end of the Blizzcon dream for Black Mamba, as because of this loss, Team D will be securing that 2nd Blizzcon spot, and we have our 2 teams locked in from the East region for Blizzcon.
That's right. Both of them are now locked in. We know 5 of the 6 total teams going to BlizzCon off Buff War Nerf Rogue's victory in this 2nd Eastern Cup titles.
I think it comes as no surprise that Buff War Nerf Rogue were actually able to take that game pretty convincingly. It seemed like they were just like the cleanest and most consistent team that we've seen from the East region so far.
Especially when it shows how well they've practiced for those last boss fights as well, those last dungeon runs that they had to do. We really knew what they were preparing for and how that kind of speaks to their confidence as well. When you're looking at a lot of teams who are drilling down on their time trials, and they might be working a little bit more on some of their lower brackets, but when they're focusing as much as possible on it to these last grand final games, definitely speaks to their confidence.
Yeah, and just some of the strategies that they had inside of this Motherlode was very interesting. They ended up pulling some of the trash with coin-operated Crowd Pummeler, that Abracadabra-esque pull that we've seen from them. And in addition to that, just how they traversed the first half of the instance was pretty good. They had a minor hiccup here with Loda going down during the death skip, but overall this was a very, very clean run from Buff War Nerf Rogue, and it was something that was very nice to see from them. It'll be interesting to see how they end up shaping up moving forward, especially once they do end up making it to BlizzCon as they are currently locked in. But overall, Buff War Nerf Rogue is a treat to see, and it's a treat to watch.
Most certainly there, and they get that nice 2-0 victory over Black Mamba, who at this point we kind of talked about it a little bit. They were not quite at the tier at Buff War Nerf Rogue by any means, but they were just a little bit better. They were a little bit better than a lot of their other opponents leading up to it. So it's more of a question of how do they start stepping up for that final cup going up on 2 weeks from now, rather Sloop.
I mean, it's tough to say because at this point, you know, they know that they're not going to Blizzcon, so they might be beating themselves a bit up about it. Maybe confidence is not an all-time high. You know, is this an opportunity for them to sharpen better as a team and gain synergy and maybe come in and win some more of the prize money next week? Yeah, that'll be great, but a lot of things will change for the future season of MDI, you know, leading into 2020. We're going to probably have an entirely new affix coming into it. You know, a lot of the metas will change, a lot of the classes will rebalance, and, you know, maybe they will stay. Hopefully they do stay together, maybe things will change. So, you know, it's a tough mentality to get out of after this cup when they know that they don't have a chance now of going to BlizzCon. But hopefully they come out and they compete well next cup 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, most definitely into that one. And I know, Tettles, you were very excited about this from that last game, getting to see that coin-operated crowd pummeler pull just after the boss, the one pull that we've seen Double Unholy DK absolutely obliterate.
I always love that pack because it'll end up showing like how much practice and how much prowess teams will end up bringing into a dungeon. In Buff War, Nerf Rogue chose to not run Double Unholy Death Knight, and I think that they probably need to be looking to revisit it, especially if they're going to be looking to do Motherload in like the best way possible. Because for me, it seems like Double Unholy Death Knight will end up facilitating some pulls that are otherwise not doable without just that massive amount of damage that they do bring.
Without question onto that one. So, I mean, after their successful pull onto it, they do secure that BlizzCon spot. So, as we mentioned, 5 of the 6 teams are now confirmed for BlizzCon. We know who's going to be going. Method EU, Method NA off of the back of their victories after their qualifications from the MDI LAN in Australia. Abracadabra off of point qualifications with Buff War and Team D having the highest points in the region, and Black Mamba is not going to be able to catch up. So big question now, 40K and no girls allowed. There's a tough road ahead for NGA to get there, but it's most certainly possible, is ironic.
It's definitely possible. Like we mentioned, the best case scenario. Well, best case scenario is 40K doesn't qualify, right?
Yeah.
And if that happens, they can get away with a 4th place finish. But if 40K qualifies, and they get 8th, 7th, 8th place, No Girls Allowed has to get 3rd place to qualify for BlizzCon, and I don't want to count them out either. Pain for Femme, they can win the tournament if 40K qualifies and also qualify for BlizzCon, but I feel like with the competition we have in NA, that's a little of a tall task. Now, we saw some interesting things happen last week in the Western region, so it's not too tall of a task, but both of these teams, No Girls Allowed and Pain for Femme, they have a tall mountain to climb to have any chance of qualifying for BlizzCon.
It's definitely going to be a rough road for them, so be sure to tune in. It's going to be on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be September 7th, so be sure to join us for all of the action of the Mythic Dungeon International. As we know, 5 of the 6 teams who are going to be going to BlizzCon. Next week, we will find that 6th team, whether or not it will be 40K or No Girls Allowed. Buff War Nerf Rogue sealing their grand finals victory in the East Cup #2 after taking down Black Mamba. Thanks so much for joining us for the show. Have a great night.